Hello and welcome to another Tyrrell's Classic Workshop. We've gone from the ridiculous to the sublime with this one. The last video we did was on the 600 brake horsepower Land Rover Defender, and we've got this little cutie in for some work, a Porsche 356 Speedster, which to a lot of people will need no introduction whatsoever because it is one of the legendary classic cars, I would venture to say. It's quite interesting because we specialise in a lot of complicated machinery here, a lot of esoteric machinery. There are plenty of Ferrari specialists and Porsche specialists in the UK and around the world who do these cars day in, day out, but it's always refreshing to have one in. People choose to not to take them, nothing against any of the one-mark specialists whatsoever, but it's always gratifying to have something like this arrive at the workshop. And this is a genuine Porsche Speedster, which means, again, to use one of my oft-used expressions, it's operating in very rarefied air, this. These can be worth up to 500,000 US dollars. They've changed hands for publicly at auction and by private treaty sales. Janis Joplin, I think she had a 356, but I couldn't say exactly. But her particular car sold at auction for $1.6 million. A lot of money for a little flat four engine sports car. However, it is what it is, and this is also a highly imitated car. And easy to replicate in some ways because it is very similar. Its lineage goes back to the VW Beetle. So Ferdinand Porsche, or Ferry Porsche, son of Ferdinand Porsche, took over the family business, and he decided to make his first sports car, his first official sports car, which was this. They started off by handcrafting, I think, 16 of them, which they called the America, because that was the market they were looking to. More of that later. And then eventually they productionized the 356 into the coupe and the Speedster and the Cabriolet A, D, etc. And it's a real minefield of Pre-A, 356B, D, etc. It's as almost bewildering as Ferrari's V12 exploits, really, which engines they put in what, etc. in the early years of Ferrari. Porsche they conceived this car. It's a very, very cleverly engineered car. It's a unibody construction. There's no separate chassis frame. It's unlike the VW Beetle, where you sort of have two round tubes, longerons, sticking out the back of the chassis that support the engine. The actual support for the engine is a genuine unibody car, this. There is no body that bolts on to the chassis separately, as far as I'm aware. Max Hoffman, who I've referred to in various other videos, we did a video a while back on the Mercedes 300 SL Gullwing that we happened to have in, a particularly interesting one. And Max Hoffman was an immensely powerful and influential figure in the American car market in the 1950s. And he famously sat at a board meeting with the Mercedes-Benz board members and said, this car you've developed, this 300 SL for racing, the Gullwing car, I want to sell those as a road car because Mercedes-Benz need to polish their brand image a bit in the US. They're very well known for staid cars. I'm digressing here, but there is a reason. He managed to persuade Mercedes-Benz, the management, that he could sell 1,000 cars off the boat when they reached the US, and that he did. That was how the 300 SL was born. So for him to be able to sway the entire company policy of Mercedes-Benz was quite an achievement. He also imported Alfa Romeo, and I think he was the BMW importer for the US for some time as well. But he was also the Porsche importer. And he was so influential with Ferry Porsche that I have it on good authority, he actually even influenced the design of the Porsche logo, the badge. we know it now, but America was a huge market for cars. I mean, I think something like 80% of Jaguar's car production in the 1960s went straight to America. Massive percentage. It was just like a sponge. It just absorbed interesting cars. The Americans love their cars. Consequently, Max Hoffman said to Ferry Porsche, if you can make this car under $3,000, bearing in mind this is the mid-1950s, that was a lot of money. $3,000 was a lot of money then. If you can make a car for $2,955, I think it was, as it turned out, minimalize everything down, add lightness, as Colin Chapman would say. So you've got this tiny little sort of make, do and mend weather equipment, the hood, with a very thin frame. The whole, there's no wind-up windows or mechanisms. The whole body is pared down. Then that was the recipe that became the Speedster after those 16 cars were built. It was a winning formula to the extent that now, of course, they are highly revered, highly sought after, highly copied, and highly valuable. So it's an absolute delight to get this car in. It really is. I don't know what these weigh, and I'm going to find out what the actual, we're going to weigh this car and find out what the actual weight is, but it's comfortably under a ton. So the power to weight ratio, whatever it has, is pretty strong, really. They were a very credible racing car in period. A lot of people bought Speedsters because they were very raceable, not least of all James Dean. He had a 356 and he was so in love with it that he arranged his filming schedule around his motor racing exploits, not the other way around. He wasn't playing hostage to anybody, even the movie studios. And eventually he was very successful with his 356 Speedster, and he traded it in for the mid-engined 550, the one that came afterwards. And unfortunately, had a fatal crash. He drove into the side of a Ford truck, and that was the end of that. But he and the 356 are sort of inextricably linked because he was a very successful racer at that time, and a lot of these were campaigned. They originally started life, I believe, with a 1500cc pushrod engine, very heavily, the bottom end, the actual crankcase, I think, was magnesium. What Porsche did was re-engineer the Beetle engine substantially. Different pistons, different crankshaft, different camshaft, ported cylinder heads, larger valve openings, etc. I think the Beetle engine developed about 30 brake horsepower, 35. This one, in standard form, developed around about, I think the Super was about 75 or 90 brake horsepower. Again, people can correct me on that. Quite a lot of Speedsters have had the original engine taken out because it's too precious. If something happens to it, if it suffers with an oil pump failure or something and throws a rod through the block, the original engine is toast. You can give it away with the car, but it's obviously not a practical, workable engine anymore. So the easiest thing in the world, swap it for another. This has got a 1600 engine in it, which has been breathed on, and it's up to over 100 brake horsepower. So that's a very interesting power to weight ratio. The car has come in specifically for a recommissioning. It has been not used for quite a while. The fuel system has got a leak on it, so we're going to have to investigate that before we do anything else. I believe he also wants us to check the antifreeze level in the cooling system. Yes, I am joking. There is no liquid cooling system. It's air cooled. Sorry, just a little joke on my part. But we're going to get it on the lift, have a look. What can happen is they have a tap underneath the dashboard, a drain cock for the fuel system. It's either off, on, or reserve. Very cleverly, if you ran out of fuel on the main fuel tank, you just twisted it 90 degrees, and that gave you a reserve fuel supply in the bottom of the tank to get you to the nearest filling station. Very clever, very pragmatic, very Porsche. It's got a serious petrol leak, the car, underneath, and it's been losing petrol from the tank. And this is where we have to ascertain what exactly is wrong. So the tank is here. The fuel pipe goes under the car and comes out just between the carburettors and the bulkhead, the floor. What can happen with these is that the petrol comes from the tank under gravity, the weight of the tank, it comes into the carburettors, and it can actually overflow in the carburettors and end up actually going down into the cylinders. So the first thing we have to do, you don't just check you've got a spark, you don't just check that we've got fuel. There is a procedure here as to how to bring this back to life. And that involves, first of all, making sure that we put a 30mm spanner on the crankshaft pulley bolt and turn the engine over very carefully to make sure that there is no hydraulicking, there is no pool of petrol in the cylinder that causes resistance to the spinning of the engine, because if you try and start the engine like that, it will hydraulic, it will bend the connecting rod, it will break the piston, whatever. You're into terminal engine damage. So we don't just go at it like a bull in a china shop. There is a set procedure, and we observe that very carefully. So we're going to observe that procedure now and see if we can slowly bring this original Speedster from 1958 back to life. Well, this is a bit like starting an aircraft with a propeller by hand. There is a knack to this, because what I really don't want to do, if there is any fuel present in the cylinders, is to actually compress it. And I can do this fairly easily. Just pull that lovely and smoothly. And because this engine has got some grunt, yeah, there's no bump there. Because this engine has got some grunt, the compression is fairly high on it. Yeah. I could do this with the spark plugs out, which would mean that it wouldn't hydraulic, but it does mean I don't get a feel for what's actually happening inside the engine. I don't get a feel for any of the compressions. I'm just very, very slowly turning this and actually feeling what's going on inside while I'm doing it. So we just lost compression there, which is good. Now we're on to the next one. This is going very well, actually, very well. And again, yeah, just nice compression on that pot. Lots of compression, but no dead stops. What I want is all 4 cylinders to be compressing evenly by feel, which is what we have, actually. And we need to do 2 full turns of the engine, because it's a 4-stroke engine. Every revolution of the engine, every 360 degrees, 2 cylinders are compressing and firing. So I have to do 2 full turns to make sure that all 4 cylinders are equal. This is lovely. I'm very happy with this. It feels excellent. Yep. I'm sure we've done 2 turns now. There it is. It's gone off compression again. Quite light. And then here we are, the next cylinder's resistance. Yeah, great. Okay, so what I can conclude from that is, we will take the plugs out and have a look at the spark plugs, but what I can conclude is we've got no petrol leakage from here, from the carburettors, into the actual cylinders in the engine. So all is well. That feels absolutely beautiful, compression-wise and smoothness-wise. No stuck piston rings to a cylinder, which can happen with a little bit of moisture. No, it's all good. I think we're on the right track here, actually. This is quite relieving. Never quite know which way these things are going to go. Well, an optional extra, apparently, on the 356s and the Speedsters were these rather cute. In fact, I think James Dean had some. Couldn't swear to that. Again, have to just look at photographs of the time. But were these stoneguards. So they're just quick release. You literally have like 10x fasteners, and they just come off. light and very practical, and could save a headlamp glass, particularly if you're racing on the beach in California. But yeah, just very, very sweet and very practical, as is everything with this car. Yeah, okie dokie. I thought this car was light. There we are. Thanks, gents. Okay, well, it looks dry at the moment, so we're going to turn the fuel tap on and see what we can get out of it. It's got to be leaking somewhere, so yeah, we'll do that. Well, here we are at the business end of the fuel system. This is the fuel stop valve here, which is currently switched off. So I'll now turn that to on, and that means that the fuel from the tank is by its own weight gravity fed down the middle of the car to the to a splitter at the back, which goes to a carburettor on each side. I mean, it's a very, very simple fuel system, but I'm hoping it's something really, really simple. It's as I say, the engine cranked over, just felt perfect turning it over, so I don't think any fuels got in there. It was smooth, there was no rings picking up on the cylinders, nothing like that. So hopefully that will now show some results. If it doesn't, I'll be moderately miffed, because the fuel system, the fuel leak will have suddenly miraculously healed itself. And I hate it when that happens, because you never know when it's going to unheal itself in the future. But anyway, let's see what's going on under the car. Well, we've turned the tap on, and this is the main fuel line in here. And yes, this is definitely the problem. We're going to have to, if I look at this pipe here, we're going to have to change all the fuel pipes, actually. But at least it's conclusive and very easy to fix that. Very easy indeed. Okay, so this is the culprit. If only everything in life was as simple as this. A humble piece of fuel hose, but it's actually very hard in places. Doesn't look that old, a few years old, but it's also quite squidgy in other places. Not great. This is a leak that's already established and an accident waiting to happen. So we're going to change every fuel pipe on the car and yeah, make it E10 compatible. Hopefully it never has E10 fuel put in it, but you never know. So, right, that at least solves the fuel leak. I'm just going to do the sniff test on the engine oil as a final test. This is one of the things that we can do before we even get to the stage of thinking about getting it running. I'm going to have a good old sniff of the engine oil to see if it's got any petrol in it or not. And if it's generally, if it does smell of petrol, if it's very thin, and if it's over the level of the top of the dipstick, we know we've had a fuel problem because it's leaked into the oil in the crankcase. I very much doubt it, but you can't beat a good old sniff. The more eagle-eyed amongst you will also have noticed that we're missing one windscreen wiper. So we have to locate an original windscreen wiper to match that one, which is an original one. It's not a modern replica. So we'll get on the case with that. Yeah, I had to mention it because if I don't, everybody will say, it's only got one windscreen wiper. So there it is. We're now going to do the sniffer test of the engine oil. This is in the days when cars actually had dipsticks, which they don't now. It's electronic sensors, and I can tell immediately. Ah, yes. Chateau Shell 2018. I'd recognise it anywhere. Yes, yes, just nicely matured. Not too much fuel contamination. Absolutely perfect. Yes, that'll do. Basically, that means it's right on the maximum mark. It means that it's not too diluted. There's no petrol in there. Yes, I'm quite happy with that. Quite happy. For the purposes of starting the engine, that will be fine. Well, that concludes another Tyrrell's Classic Workshop for the moment. There will be a part 2 along. Thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe. It does help. And we'll be back with something else very soon.